Peace. What's going on, y'all? Give me 1 second. I'm about to just hop on Insight Timer momentarily. Just lighting my candles, setting the vibe. Hopefully, everybody's doing good. Hopefully, you're feeling blessed. Hopefully, you know that you're blessed. If you alive and you breathing and you got your health, you got your family. You know, you woke up another day. You're blessed. What you do with that blessing is up to you, but you for sure blessed. I'm blessed. I know I'm blessed. And I don't mean that in a spooky way. I just mean that the energy within you, the God energy within you is in harmony with everything around you that brought you forth into existence. You manifesting right now. You alive. You breathing. It's a beautiful thing. I'm going to hop on Insight Timer real quick. All right, Insight Timer. Peace and blessing. What's going on, y'all? As y'all come in, just let me know how y'all doing. Let me know how you feeling. Let me know how everything's going. Let me put this up real quick. Yeah, my mic is amazing. My microphone over here is amazing, but it looked weird. I might have to get a cooler looking mic one of these days, but I love this mic though. This mic pick up everything. So what's going on, Inside Timer? Let me know how y'all doing. We're gonna get started at about the 7-minute mark like we usually do. But I just want to do a check-in. We always do a check-in every time I do a live stream. Today was a good day. Hung out with the boys. For some odd reason, I've been dying to go to the beach lately. I want to see the ocean. So I think the beach is about a 2-hour drive from here. Andy from the UK, what's going on? Glad you joined us. How's everything going? Yeah, like I was saying, I've been dying to go to the beach. My sons do not want to go to the beach though, but I want to see the ocean. I think it's like a 2-hour drive to the ocean. So one of these days, I'm just gonna say, "Come on, boys, we going." I want to be in the ocean. My sons hate the ocean. They like the pool better. I think the ocean is intimidating for them. If the idea of genetic memory is real, Adele, how you doing, Adele? Thank you. Yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one because I wanted to cover a lot in this one, but then I realized there's so many stories that I wanted to cover, so I decided to do it as a series, and this will be part one. Yeah, exactly. I want to go see. I want to go to the ocean. I love. When I was younger, I used to hate going to the beach. I was so terrified because I almost drowned about. I literally almost drowned about 7 times in my life, from the age of, I think I was 7. My older brother was 9. I almost drowned. Rita, what's going on? Yeah, I think I was 7. My older brother was 9. Almost drowned. My older brother saved me. Then I went back again to the ocean. Then I went back again. I kept almost drowning. I always push things too far with water. Like I respect all the elements, but water, I always feel like I'm stronger than water. I respect fire. I respect air. You know what I mean? I respect earth. But for some odd reason, my mind always tell me that I could just do whatever I want in the water. And I always end up almost dying. I guess I got to develop some respect for the element of water. Oh, wow. Andy, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Sorry to hear that. But, I'm glad you're recovering. I'm glad you're bouncing back. I'm glad you're doing okay. Just be cautious. Just be careful. Wear your mask. Wear your mask. Take your vitamins. Get lots of sunlight. I did not catch COVID, and I didn't get vaccinated either. But a part of it is luck, and a part of it is I always wear my mask. I'm always cautious, but a lot of it was luck because when COVID first came out, I don't know if y'all remember when COVID first came out, they were saying, "Wow, black people don't seem to be getting COVID." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm good." So I used to walk around. no mask, no nothing. I used to go everywhere. I didn't care. And then eventually, people started getting sick in the hood. I was like, oh, I better wear my mask. Because at first they kept saying, for some reason, black people can't get it. I was like, okay, good. I'm as black as they get, so I must be okay. And then come to find out, they started seeing black people dying. So I'm like, man, let me put this mask on for something happen. Yeah, and I used to work at a drug rehab facility for adolescents, which I told you guys. And we had a bunch of not a bunch, but we did have some COVID cases where a couple of the kids would catch COVID, so everything would get shut down. Everybody had to wear a mask and the facial shield and gloves. Like it was tough, real tough. So yeah, I take every precaution I possibly can. But how's everybody else feeling? Hopefully you guys are doing good. I know I definitely want to get some traveling done before the summertime, but I'm so rusty. I'm so rusty at doing things that are considered fun. I don't really have fun no more. I just want to meditate and teach and work. Are you still practicing gratitude? Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Gratitude saved my life. Gratitude saved my life. When me and my wife first got separated, I was going through a real rough time. I was struggling. And then I said, you know what? I teach meditation. Let me really, really engage in this meditation. And I said, what should I meditate? How should I meditate? What technique should I use? And I said, let me use gratitude. And then every day I would sit down for 10 minutes and I would just think of all the things I was grateful for. And for the first time I tried that, it was a struggle to think of things to be grateful for because I was struggling financially, emotionally struggling, just tired all the time. And then the thoughts started to flow and I began to be very grateful. And the list for things I was grateful for started getting very long. And then next thing you know, like 10 minutes of meditation on gratitude, it was so many things I was grateful for. I said, you know what? Let me stop. So I had to use a timer every day to stop at about 10 minutes because otherwise I would just spend who knows how long being pointing out all the things I was grateful for. Your traffic in Virginia is yeah. I'm in Maryland now, and I know certain times of the day I don't go anywhere in Maryland. I don't go nowhere after like 3:30. I don't go nowhere because I already know that DC traffic, that Virginia traffic is insane. So I'm not going nowhere. But yeah, when me and my sons plan to go places, I usually try to go like around noon. I'll leave the house at like noon, get what we got to get, have fun, and then I'll be back home usually around 3:34 when the traffic is starting to get really, really, really tight, and we'll be good. But yeah, let's get started. Not to shift suddenly like that, but yeah, it's time to rock and roll. Y'all know what time it is. We 7 minutes deep. What? You know what time it is? Y'all know how we do. Let me bring the energy, man, because I'm excited. I'm really excited. So what are we talking about tonight? I started off with this idea. This idea came to me a long time ago called the Maladies of the Avatars. And I happened to scribble that sentence down in one of my old notebooks, and I've been trying to clean up. If you see my office space right now, it's a mess, right? So I'm trying to organize it, and I found one of my old notebooks a couple weeks ago, and I just happened to look through it, and I saw that phrase, the Maladies of the Avatars. And I just remember all of those ideas that I had, and the idea of the Maladies of the Avatars is basically to talk about spiritual figures, right? People who are considered to be incarnations of God or prophets or spiritual leaders, swamis, gurus, and the psychological struggles they went through. A lot of individuals who you read about in scripture were individuals who were struggling with mental illness. And they had an awakening, and that's how they overcame the mental illness. If you read these scriptures from a modern perspective and try to be um as scientific as possible, a lot of times what you're seeing is they're describing symptoms of mental illness. They're describing symptoms of mental illness. And so when that idea seized hold of my mind, I really wanted to write about that, but I didn't have time to do enough research and put it together. And so when I found that phrase, I said it must be the time. When I found that old notebook, John the Baptist, exactly, they thought he was nuts out in the wilderness, walking around butt naked with loincloth on, eating bugs, which was a mistranslation. But yeah, they thought he was insane. And he was definitely a fascinating and polarizing character at his time. And I really like they have a religion called the Mandaeans, which is like the probably the last remaining Gnostic religion. We'll go into Gnosticism one of these days. But yeah, the Mandaeans, John the Baptist is the central figure. I want to study that a little bit because John the Baptist always struck me as being very interesting because he was the precursor for Christ. He was kind of like the harbinger of Christ. So I really wish that the Bible had a little bit more about him in it because I want to see how he set it off. He was the one that set it off. He was the one that set it off and got everybody all amped up for the arrival of Christ, which I think is that's fascinating. But yeah, tonight, what I want to discuss, I want to talk about Moses. Yeah, that's true too. Rita, that's a very good point. Listen to what Rita said. She said that in our culture we see it as mental illness. In other cultures, they see it as a sign of transitioning, and that's a very good point as well. I'm glad you pointed that out. But the reason why I wanted to discuss it in terms of mental illness because I'm a person who suffered from mental illness. And I struggled for a long time. I struggled with depression. I struggled with anxiety, suicidal ideation, alcoholism, destructive behaviors, trauma. I told you guys my story a bunch of times. It's gotten to the point now where I think I've gone over all the shocking and embarrassing details of my transition. But for me at the time, I didn't think I was transitioning. I was just a person who was very sick and I wanted to overcome my illness. And I think a lot of the individuals who we celebrate them for their awakening, but we don't focus on who they were and what they were before the awakening. And that's what I really wanted to discuss because so many of us are dealing with that, right? So many of us are dealing with mental health issues. And I know when I was going through depression, going through anxiety, having panic attacks, you feel trapped. When you feel physically trapped, at least, with a guy like me, I weigh 260 pounds. I can bench press like almost 300 pounds. You know what I mean? I got a beard. So when you husky and you got a beard, you kind of invincible. Like I've been, I've been hit by cars and walked away, literally. So I'm invincible. My beard makes me invincible, right? So I'm not really scared of nothing. But but the thing about it is, like when you're physically trapped and cornered, you feel like, okay, I can push my way out of this. I can fight my way out of this. I can talk my way out of this. I've had situations where growing up in the hood, I had somebody pull a gun on me, and I told him to get his gun out my face while I smacked him. And I'm not saying it because I'm a tough guy. I'm not a tough guy, but you kind of understand with physical danger, there's a way you can handle that. But with a mental danger, with mental illness, you feel like, how can I get out of this? You feel completely lost. You feel like you're trapped, but it's the worst cage of all. It's a cage without bars. It's a cage without any kind of physical dimension to it. It's an insubstantial cage. It's the cage of your own mind. And that's the scary part. When you're dealing with mental illness, you got to deal with the cage of your own thoughts and getting stuck in thought patterns. You wake up in the morning, your first thought is, "Oh, should I live today? Should today be the day that I end it?" And you can't break that pattern of thought. When you think nobody loves me or ever will, that's a trap in your own mind. That's terrifying to be stuck like that. I was stuck like that. That's a scary. I had guns pulled on me, and me waking up with my own thoughts was the scariest thing ever. I couldn't even sleep at night. I would be up for days and days, and I would be awake for so long that I would mentally start to fall apart. Couldn't even sleep unless I was drunk. For years. For years, I couldn't even sleep at night unless I took a shot or had a beer. That's the trap of your own mind. That's scary. Worse than any trap I've ever been in. I've been in handcuffs. I've been in handcuffs. I've been in the back of the cop car. Not that I was never no criminal or nothing like that. But being a young kid in the hood, you get in situations. The scariest thing I ever seen. I've seen shootouts. I've seen people get stabbed. Scariest thing is my own thoughts. There ain't nothing scarier than your own thoughts when you're stuck in a mental illness. Nothing scarier than that. And you feel like you can't get out. So when I look at these scriptures and these stories, there's so much symbolism that is good for spiritual development, but there's a lot in there that we can use practically. I think the benefit of understanding the depth of a spiritual text is understanding the metaphors for spiritual development, but also the practical information to help you change your life in the present moment. So I wanted to discuss an individual who indeed suffered from a mental illness, and it was Yeah, exactly. We're disconnected from ourselves in order to survive. Exactly. And that's I'm glad you said that, because that's a lot of what tonight's focus is going to be on. Next week, I think I'm going to do Krishna, but this week we're going to study that dude with the beard. We're going to study Moses. We're going to study Moses. Now, why would I focus on Moses? One time I did a live stream. I was talking about personal development, and I was using the story of Moses and his conversations with God. I think it was the one I did called uh "You Are the I Am," and I was talking about Moses' interactions with Yahweh. And that story, I was so fascinated by the process of Moses' personal development. Hey, what's going on? No, you're not too late. We're just getting started. Usually we start at about the 7-minute mark. How you doing? But yeah, so that story of Moses' personal development was fascinating to me, and so I kind of wanted to examine it a little bit closer, because I think at the beginning of the story, what we're witnessing is we're witnessing a person who has what they call imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. Moses had imposter syndrome. Let's go back to the beginning of the story of Moses. Moses was an Israelite. He lived during a time where there was a decree put out by Pharaoh to kill all the firstborn sons of the houses of Israel, because he saw the Israelites, the population growing, and so he said, let's get rid of the population. Let's narrow down the population a little bit. We're going to start killing these little babies. Moses' mother was forward thinking and wanted to protect her son, so she put her son in a basket, put him in the river. The basket floated down the river, and he was picked up by a woman who lived in the house of Pharaoh, who was actually royalty in the house of Pharaoh. She picked up the baby Moses and brought him into the house of Pharaoh. Moses grew up in an environment where, from the very beginning, his true self, who he truly was, had to be hidden. Now, did he know that he was an Israelite? Did he know that he didn't belong among Pharaoh's house? It's possible. But the point is that he grew up in an environment where he couldn't be himself. He couldn't come out and say, I'm from the house of Israel. He couldn't come out and say, I'm an Israelite and I know what you're doing, Pharaoh. Let my people go. No, the whole time he was living within the confines of Pharaoh's home, he had to hide who he was. He couldn't be himself, couldn't connect to his traditions, couldn't connect to his culture. So he had to put on a front the entire time he was within the palace of Pharaoh. He had to pretend to be something he wasn't in order to survive. If they had found out that he was an Israelite and the decree had been put out to kill all the firstborn sons, they would have killed him. So he had to hide his identity and conceal who he was in order to survive in the environment where he was. So he had to develop a false persona. And so when you're a person walking around in a false persona in a hostile environment and you can't fight your way out of it, right? You have to adapt to it when you don't have power. And when you adapt to it, you feel disconnected from who you truly are. You feel as if you are an imposter. You feel like an imposter. And the same thing happens with individuals who work in an environment where, say, for instance, if you work in a job environment and there's no people like you around, if you're somebody who is an immigrant, or if you're African American, or if you're a woman in a mostly male environment, a lot of times you feel as if you have to pretend to be something you're not to fit in, for the sake of surviving in this environment or trying to thrive in this environment, right? So when you have to develop this ability to quote code switch, what happens is that you feel disconnected from who you truly are. You feel like you're putting on the front. Exactly. Really, you're right. Set up like that. So then what happens? Moses develops imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is a modern pop term. Let's be honest. It's a pop term. It's not an official diagnosis. What is an official diagnosis is the root cause of what they call imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is an effect of anxiety or depression that causes an individual to feel that they are unworthy of their achievements and success. And a lot of times with people who are hyper achievers, they always feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm really not this smart. I'm just pretending to be this smart. I'm really not this smart. I'm going to get exposed. People are going to expose me. I don't deserve to be here. So the term itself, imposter syndrome, is a pop term that has become popular. However, beneath that, you have anxiety and depression. And of course, Moses was anxious. You grew up in a household where you see your people out in public being killed, and you right smack dab in the political epicenter of what's happening. Yeah, you're gonna be a little anxious. You're gonna be a little anxious. If you work in an environment where there ain't no black people around, and you see stuff happening in the streets where cops are killing black people, yeah, you're gonna feel a little anxious. And Osiris, I'm glad you pointed that out. But the thing about it is, we don't know if he knew he was an Israelite. If you read the scripture and go through it, there's some scriptures that kind of indicate that he's somewhat new. Keep in mind, he was in Pharaoh's house. He killed an Egyptian for beating up an Israelite. There was an Egyptian who was beating an Israelite. He killed the Egyptian and fled, and then came right back. And his mission was to fight for the Israelite people. So it could be possible that individuals told him who he was secretly. Now, I'm not saying that's guaranteed, but there are some indications. Like, for instance, I was reading in a scripture tonight that was saying that when they fled from Egypt, he took the bones of Joseph with him. That's an Israelite tradition where they had to take the bones of Joseph with them wherever they went because Joseph was one of the prophets. How did he know to do that? When he fled from Egypt and led the people, he was the one that took the bones of Joseph. So there's some scriptures that indicate that he knew who he was. But that's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. So I wanted to go through and bring up a couple of examples of the scriptures that I read. Now, people go through these struggles, these emotional struggles. People go through these emotional struggles, and we're all seeking the same thing. We have mental health issues, and we're all seeking the same thing, what the Hindus and the Buddhists refer to as moksha, what Christians call salvation. What I think many Muslim Sufis, they refer to it as wahda, or oneness. Everybody's seeking something. We're seeking a certain level of personal spiritual development so we can achieve the goal of being free. Free of what? Free of pain, free of sickness. And we use our spirituality, and should be using our spirituality as a means of evolving beyond all of our illnesses, especially our mental illnesses, right? And so Moses was an example of an individual who used the spiritual connection with God as a means of overcoming his mental illness. Now, this is not me being religious. I don't follow a religion. I make sure I want to make it abundantly clear. However, I do think there's value in scripture, and I want us to examine it and get the value out of it. So let's go over a couple of the scriptures. So Moses, after he killed the Egyptian, fled from Egypt, where did he go? He went to a land called Midian and found a man named Jethro. He married Jethro's daughter Zipporah, right? And he worked for Jethro. And as he's working for Jethro, tending to the sheep, he's walking through the desert one day and he encounters God. God appears to Moses. And God tells him directly, lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And what was Moses' response? His response was, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? Now, keep in mind, this is a dude who is looking at God. He's having an extremely powerful experience. He's hearing the voice of God speak from a burning bush, and the fire burning the bush is not consuming the bush. He's witnessing a miracle. He's right in the midst of a miracle. He's watching the miracle happen. He's a part of that miracle. You speaking to God. But he felt so insecure, so inadequate within self. He said, well, who am I to do that? Now, hold on, brother. You're talking to God. But that's the thing with imposter syndrome. Just being in a position where you can speak directly with the Lord or God, that should be enough. It'd be enough for me. But when you feel like you're unworthy, you're always going to doubt yourself, even in the midst of a miracle. And that happens a lot of times to us. When you get a new job promotion, oh, I can't do this. You're in a relationship with somebody you care about and you love. Oh, I'm going to mess this up. I was talking to a friend of mine who was talking to me about that. He's in a new relationship. He's happy. And he talked about how he was in his last relationship. He had a feeling he was going to mess things up. So even though you're in the midst of the miracle, you're witnessing this happen. You're witnessing this blessing be bestowed upon you. And you're telling yourself, I don't know if I can do this. You feel like you're unworthy of the success. Just you being in that moment. Just you being in that moment is evidence of you being worthy. But you're still doubting yourself. You still feel unworthy. Moses, once again, Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. He says, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken to my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. More self-doubt. More of, I don't know I can do this. Moreof, they're not going to listen to me. Keep in mind, he lived in a house of Pharaoh. So of course, he was born into a position where he could have used that authority. But he still felt like they wouldn't listen to him. Even as a member of the house of Pharaoh, they wouldn't listen to him. As a man being led by God, they won't listen to him. So despite the fact that you're in the midst of a miracle, you still doubting yourself? Exodus chapter 4, verse 10. Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, not since thou hast spoken to thy servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Once again, more doubts. More doubts. Firefly, what's going on? More doubt. He keeps talking about, and this is all this one chapter. I get like multiple verses from one chapter. He keeps talking about, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I don't know if I can do this, God. I don't know if I can do this. Now, granted, there are going to be moments in your life where you're going to come across really big tasks. Some of the things you're going to come across are going to be very big, or they're going to seem big to you. Some of these things are going to seem really, really, really ambitious, right? But just because something is big, just because it's ambitious, don't mean you can't do it. The whole idea that you can't do something is something that's programmed into your consciousness. This was programmed into his consciousness because all those years we had to pretend to be something he wasn't. He felt like an imposter. He felt disconnected. I'm not worthy. Now imagine growing up being an Israelite in the house of Egypt. Yeah, you're going to feel unworthy. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel depressed. And that's how many of us feel, especially when you grow up in a hostile environment when you're young. If you grew up in the hood, you grew up in a house where there was abuse. You grew up in a house where there was verbal abuse, physical abuse, trauma, sexual abuse. You grew up in those kinds of environments, and then somebody puts you in the real world and says, "Go achieve, go be great." And then you might overcome all of the things holding you back, and you might be great, but it's still gonna be that part of you that's still that wounded child. And that wounded child is still gonna be telling you the same thing that your parents told you, or the people who hurt you and abused you told you. You're not good enough. Now, I'm kind of fleshing out the story a little bit, but imagine Moses in the house of Pharaoh. Maybe somebody did that to him. Maybe somebody said to him, Moses, you ain't good enough. We know who you an Israelite. We ain't kill you yet, but we know you an Israelite. You ain't good enough. Then you internalize that. You grow up and you become an adult. You want to achieve great things, but that's still that old voice of self-doubt. You're not good enough. I'm not happy with you. You're not tall enough. You're not strong enough. You're not thin enough. You're not eloquent enough. You ain't got enough swag. And then you spend your whole life walking around doubting yourself. So that whole 4th chapter is God saying you can do it, and Moses telling God, nope, I can't. Imagine that. Imagine you doubt yourself so much that God appears to you in the form of fire and tells you you can do it. And you're like, I don't know, God. That's a lot of self-doubt. That's a lot of self-doubt. Now, of course, we might not see God in the burning bush. But what if somebody comes to you and says, you're good enough for this job? You're way overqualified for this job. We definitely want to hire you. What if a woman comes to you and be like, man, I love you. I think you're an excellent choice for a boyfriend. What if a man comes to you and says, man, I'm in love with you. I got to be with you. We do the same thing in our day-to-day life all the time. I'm not good enough. Time to self-sabotage. Oh, you want to go to a nice business dinner? Okay, let me take a couple of shots and get sloppy so you'll reject me. I want to get sloppy and embarrass you so you'll reject me. I don't think I can be loved. So you know what? I don't think I'm good enough for you. So let me just self-sabotage. Let me cheat on you because I want you to break up with me because I don't think I'm good enough for you. I can't do this job. Time for me to show up late every day so you can fire me because I'm not good enough to be here. Same thing. Actions speak louder than words. Your actions speak louder than your words. So while Moses was telling God to his face, I'm not worthy, I can't do it. We do the same thing with our actions. I'm not worthy, I can't do it. I'm not worthy, I can't do it. Your actions are saying you're not worthy. Your actions are saying you're not worthy. Or saying that you believe you're not worthy. Chapter 6, verse 10. Behold, the children of Israel have not hearkened unto me. How shall Pharaoh hear me, who am of uncircumcised lips? Now that's 2 whole chapters. 2 whole chapters of him telling God, God, I don't know if I can do this. 2 whole chapters. Because I think he meet God in chapter 3. They talk a little bit, and then chapter 4, that's when they start the back and forth of him telling Moses to go free the Israelites, and Moses telling him he can't do it. We in chapter 6. He done went to see Pharaoh, got embarrassed, and still think he can't do it. That's the one obstacle. See, that's what happens with us. A lot of times we start off, we do something, we have one obstacle, we hit one wall, your confidence crumbles. God said, go talk to Pharaoh. Moses went to go talk to Pharaoh. Things kind of backfired and got a little bit messed up. So then he's right back on the same thing. Thankfully, he can't listen to me. He said, I got uncircumcised lips, meaning that he's not eloquent. He can't speak properly. But God is telling him constantly, he's telling him, not only will you be able to do this, but I'm going to be with you the whole time. And God told him, there's a scripture where it says that God tells him, I'll make a God of you. Moses says, I can't speak. Well, God says, okay, bring your brother Aaron. Aaron is very eloquent and he's trained in the law. He said, you'll be a God to Aaron, and Aaron will be your prophet. So God is telling him, like, you have divine power in you. He's telling him, you'll be a God to Aaron, and he'll be your prophet. He'll speak for you. Problem solved. Now what? And like any pessimistic person, they say they got a problem for every solution. Same thing. Moving on. Now, there's a part where Moses goes to speak to Pharaoh. After all this hoopla about I can't do it, I'm not sure, I think I'm going to drop the ball. After all that hoopla, Moses goes to speak to Pharaoh. And God tells Moses, tell Aaron to tap the waters of the river with his staff and just fall back and watch what happens. So Moses says, Aaron, hit the river with your staff. Hit the river with your staff in front of Pharaoh. Then Aaron takes the staff, hits the water. All the water turns into blood. Can't drink the water. Fish start to die. Animals drink the water and die. People can't drink the water. They drink the water and they get sick. And then after that, Moses starts to feel a little bit of confidence. Now, I think that's very interesting because we could say Moses' faith was based upon something happening. And when that something miraculous happened, it increased his faith. But no, I think that's kind of a weak way to interpret it. Here's how I interpreted that. Moses did not do what God said and develop faith after he saw the miracle of the river turning into blood. Moses followed God's instructions first. Then the faith came. Quite often, you might doubt yourself. You might not have faith in yourself. You might not think you can do something, but you found your purpose. You found something that you feel you need to do, something you need to have as a part of your life, something you need to bring forth and manifest. And then when you start to take action, you can build faith upon your action. That's called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy. I used to have low self-esteem. I used to, do the affirmation thing and say, okay, I can increase my self-esteem by saying, I am great, I am wonderful. No, you don't build self-esteem like that. The affirmation thing, don't let nobody, and I'm going to tell you up front, don't let nobody sell you something that's not true. You're not going to build self-esteem by saying nice things to yourself. Positive self-talk is excellent. I do agree with that. I agree with that. It's good for mental health. But you're not going to develop something that you lack just by talking to yourself. If you have low self-esteem, what you need to develop your self-esteem, which is your faith in yourself, is self-efficacy. You put the work in, you build yourself up, and when you become competent at something and strong at something, and when you see what you can do, that's when your self-esteem increases. Your self-esteem increases based upon your personal development. I've been there. I tried all of that other stuff. I tried to develop my self-esteem even through meditation. Tried to develop my self-esteem through affirmations. And those affirmations and those meditations help to calm me down and stabilize me. But when you study the science of developing self-esteem, you need self-efficacy. You put the work in. You take that first step. Our Muslim brother said, you take one step toward Allah, he'll take 10 steps towards you. You might not have the faith in yourself. You might not have the faith in the circumstances that things are going to work out. But you can develop faith. That's the one thing they don't talk about. You can actually develop faith in you. You don't have to wait for things to get good in order for your faith to develop. You can develop faith while things are falling apart. Just knowing that you have the ability to try and develop yourself. If you struggle with something, okay, understand you can develop yourself and get better at it. You're trying to achieve a goal, you might not have the skills to achieve that goal, but you can develop those skills. You might not have the power to move the mountain, or maybe you do. When I deal with my sons and talk to my sons, I don't put limits on it. I don't say he can't read that book. I don't say he can't run that far. I don't say he can't climb that tree. I don't say he can't lift that up. I don't know. And neither do you. You don't know what you can do because you've never been pushed. Especially if you're a person who lives in self-doubt. If you're a person who lives in self-doubt, you'd never push yourself. That's the whole point of self-doubt, is to keep you from going from achieving your goals and pushing hard as you can. You've never pushed yourself. If you doubt yourself, that means you've never pushed yourself. People who have self-doubt are individuals who doubt themselves because they've never been pushed. They don't know how powerful they are. And so the whole point is to understand that you don't need faith in order to start the work. You can start the work first. Exactly. Yep. If you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. Exactly. You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. We don't know the limitations of an individual. The limitations that you think you are all just programmed and conditioned into you by your environment. Same thing with Moses. He thought he had all these limitations, but he found his purpose. Step 1, find your purpose. Step 2, put the work in, even if you think you might not be able to do it. Lily, that's very important too. And that's another thing that we have to do. Gain control over your mind. You don't know where to focus. Gain control over your mind. All of this stuff is stuff that is within you, but a lot of times, like you said, can't focus the mind because you may be going through depression, you may be going through anxiety, maybe stressed out, maybe have a lot of things you want to achieve but are unsure where to begin. Calm down first. The first step is always to look within yourself. Oh yeah. That's a tough one. That is a tough one, and that's one of those things where throw away the TV. Good point, Rita. But Lily, that's a really tough one. Yeah. So yeah, first and foremost, let me say I'm not gonna sit here and use the phrase, "Oh, I understand what you're going through," because that's something I've never been through, and that's a tough situation. I have been through tough situations in my life, so I can tell you what I've done. One of the things that I've done that I had to learn was that you have to take time for yourself, especially in tough situations like that. As a military wife, and full time mom, that's stressful in and of itself. 22-month old, still very very young. And so the thing about it is, it's not. I don't think you're trying to balance being a military wife and a full-time mom. What you have to do is balance being a military wife and full-time mom, and balance that against nurturing yourself. Because it gets to the point where in life we get exhausted because so much is going out. Military spouse, a lot is going out. You take care of the house, you take care of the bills, you take care of all the stuff that needs to get done back home. And on top of that, you're a full-time mom. That's more energy going out. And if your young one is like my firstborn didn't sleep. He didn't sleep. He'd just pop up. He used to just wake up and we just find him running in circles around the house at night. So it could be exhausting. So what you have to do is find ways to strategize so you can get something coming in because you can run yourself dry. That's what burnout is. in every field, people get burned out because there's so much going out and not enough coming in. And one of the things you got to do is you got to nurture you. You got to feed yourself. You can't, you can't draw from a dry well. Sometimes you just might feel like you're a dry well. Sometimes you might feel like, man, I got nothing left to give. So find little ways, little cheat codes where you could gift yourself time and gift yourself the space, because your brain needs to heal. Having a child, your brain is exhausted. Your brain is exhausted. You're physically exhausted. So ask yourself that question. Start with that question. What are you doing to put something back in so you can have something to put out? Everything is based on balance. In Kemetic spirituality, they refer to that as ma'at. Ma'at is the principle of balance, reciprocity, justice. That's what sustains the universe. And that's what sustains us. As above, so below. The universe is sustained because everything feeds off of everything else. Same thing with you. What is feeding you? Superstar, how you doing? Hello to you too. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's one of the things I had to learn how to do. Had to learn how to feed me. Insight time is your retreat at night. Excellent. Excellent. Now ask yourself this. Insight timer is your retreat at night. Ask yourself, okay, is that enough? If that's enough, great, cool. But just make sure you take time for you. Take time to get your rest. Cheat if you have to. And when I say cheat, like one thing I would do, I would have to babysit my son. So what I would do is, I was working like 3 jobs when my son was first born. And so what I would do is I would just figure out little ways where I would hold him and go to sleep holding him. You know what I'm saying? I would figure out little ways where I could rest and take care of him at the same time. I used to like put his crib in front of me and then sit next to his crib, or I would lay down on the floor and hold his little hand so he wouldn't be scared, and we both go to sleep, brother. Even if because I would leave him in the room, he'd start crying, he wouldn't be held, and we were trying to train him to sleep in the crib by himself. So I go to sleep right on the floor, right next to him, holding his hand. That's a way to help him get some rest, and I'll get whatever rest I can on the floor. Balance. Find a little cheat codes when you can. Find cheat codes when you can. Co-sleep a lot, yeah. But I just had to break the habit because I was a guy who was married and I was very attracted to my wife. So whenever my son was sleeping in the bed, that was shutting down all my plans. So I had to had to train him to sleep in his crib. And sometimes it was a struggle. And then moms love having kids. Moms love having kids in the bed. So I had to train her too. Had to train him to sleep in the bed and train her to leave him there. The husband's work is never done. But yeah, let's go back to my man Moses. Moses started to feel himself at that point. He started to feel himself at that point because he started to see the fruits of his labor. All this time, him doubting and feeling like he wasn't good enough, but he put the work in and developed himself and built himself up. And upon building himself up, he started to have more faith. And you'll notice there's a shift in the way Moses talks. There's a shift in the way he talks at that exact moment. At first, he's like, I don't know if I can do it, God. I'm not sure, God. He currently smushed in between you two. See? Mothers love having kids in the bed. We as dads, we want them out. We want them out the bed right now. Put him back in the crib. I used to always have to sneak in there, try to get him out the way. He ain't messing up my plans, little man. But yeah, after you see that scene in the Bible, Moses started to feel himself. He started to feel more confident. He put in the work first, then the confidence came. It wasn't the other way around. It wasn't like he had faith immediately from the beginning. It wasn't that he had confidence immediately from the beginning. He had to work up to that. And I think that's a very important spiritual lesson. A lot of times when you read these spiritual stories, it's like, somebody starts off immediately with faith. Bad things happen and their faith gets them through. But the story of Moses is fascinating to me because this is a guy who ain't had no faith. He ain't had no faith. Like, nah, I can't do that. Nope, sorry. Nah, I'm not sure. And he had to build up his faith. I think it's very important to understand you got to build up your faith in you. Build up your faith in your capacity to handle things. And then you start to learn yourself. That's the most important knowledge you can possibly have is knowledge of you, knowledge of self. That's very important. And once you start to learn yourself, you can't help but to feel more happy and more confident because you know what you need. I think that was the hardest part for me is just knowing what I needed and knowing what I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be happy. I didn't know what I needed. So I spent most of my time drunk, to be honest. And I told y'all guys that all the time. To be smashed all the time. I remember like I used to live with my boy Ant and his girlfriend at the time, Anya. And we used to all live together in his house in Weathersfield. And I remember Anya loved to cook for everybody. She used to always love doing things for everybody. So we had this tradition where she would go to the grocery store every Sunday morning and make a big breakfast for everybody. And I remember I would go with her to the grocery store, and I remember just walking around the grocery store, and it'd be like 8, 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I would have this big yellow cup that I called my drinking cup, and it would be just filled with ice and Jack Daniels. And I'm walking around the grocery store just chugging away, like ridiculous. Like 8 o'clock. Who does that at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm glad I started to get to get more spiritual, because I'm very unhealthy behavior, and I had to grow. I didn't start off with faith in me. I had to learn me. I had to learn what I needed. I thought I needed to be drunk all the time to be happy. And then I realized that all the stuff I was doing was just stimulating myself and distracting myself. And I realized that, you know what I like? I like intimacy. I like relationships. I like quiet. I like meditation. I like personal development. That's what makes me happy. I don't like people say, "Hey, let's go do this party." None of that makes me happy. I did all of that stuff. Me and my boys were going to adult bars because back in the day, before the year 2000, Hartford, Connecticut was like the wild, wild west. We were teenagers. We could pretty much go anywhere. So from the age of 17 to 20, I turned 20 in the year 2000. From 17 to 20, I used to go to bars. We used to play pool. We used to pick up older women, all kinds of stuff. I thought that stuff would make me happy. And I felt very empty, and I went through intense depression. I didn't know me well enough to figure out what I needed to be happy. And that's one of the things that we have to do. Same as you have to develop self-efficacy and you got to develop knowledge of God, you got to develop knowledge of who you are too. That's the whole point. When I said you find your purpose first, put the work in, and then develop faith, find your purpose, which is to make yourself, to learn yourself and know yourself. Then put the work in and try to see what it is that makes you happy. We spend a lot of time imitating what we see on TV, thinking that's going to make us happy. And then we do all of that stuff. Sleeping around, drinking, smoking weed. You see key characters on TV do that stuff. So you think, hey, I can do that too. They seem pretty happy. I'll do it too. But we don't know ourselves. And then once you know yourself, you're like, you know what? I had to learn myself. Like, you know what? I don't like smoking weed. I used to like, I call it playing the trumpet. We're going to talk in our code. Remember, that's our code. When I say play the trumpet, I'm talking about that. I used to like playing the trumpet. But at the same time, I can't handle it. Can't handle it. It don't work for my brain. For the kind of brain that I have, playing the trumpet it just don't work. I had to learn that drinking don't work. Yeah, Rita, you're right. The programming is too powerful. Have us doing all kinds of weird stuff, trying to imitate individuals we see on TV who are happy. Cold words, yeah. Play the trumpet, and that's what happens. You look at like a lot of people. I learned about relationships and love from TV. And then I had to go out into the world and learn and realize, wait a second, all this TV stuff is fake. It ain't real. Not even remotely close. It's all a fantasy. And a lot of it is a sick fantasy. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate we put ourselves in these positions because of these fantasies. But if you look at these spiritual traditions, I'm not a religious person, but they have value because they offer these lessons. When something is when with the spirit with history, a lot of times you can learn things and history will change. A lot of what we've been taught as history is not even real, right? Because you're always going to find new discoveries, and our perception of that is going to change. But spiritual traditions are interesting because they may not be literal, but they're true. They're true. Your reality shows ain't real. You're right. But they're true. These spiritual traditions are true, and they're always going to be true. That's why they have value and they last for thousands of years, because there's always going to be a struggle between human beings and the exterior world and our understanding of ourselves and us discovering ourselves. That's the whole point of these spiritual traditions. They're here to offer us clues. Like Hansel and Gretel, when they had was it Hansel and Gretel? When they had the breadcrumbs to help them find their way back home. I could be talking about the whole wrong story. But yeah, the whole thing with the breadcrumbs, they had to leave breadcrumbs to find their way back home. That's what spiritual traditions are. That's why I don't get too jazzed up on religion, but I understand the spiritual tradition is there to guide you back home, which is the self, the supreme self, the inner self, the higher self. That's home. It's hard to find your way back home out in the wilderness. We out in the wilderness. But one thing I realized today that I wanted to talk about, and this will be the last thing I say. There's two concepts of time. One of the concepts of time is called eternalism. Now, eternalism teaches that we have a perception of time that is kind of linear. We're in the present moment and we see time moving forward from one moment to the next because we are three-dimensional and we live within the confines of four-dimensional time. So with us, space-time, the space-time continuum kind of is where we live, and that's how we see things from within the space-time continuum. But there's another way to see time, eternalism, which is where you can rise above the space-time continuum and look at time from the outside, and you realize that everything is not happening one moment to the next in a linear fashion. Everything is happening all at once, everywhere. There is no past, there is no present. Everything is happening all at the same time, right? That's eternalism. And when I was thinking about eternalism, stepping outside of space time and seeing things from a God's eye view, you realize you don't have nothing to worry about because God already won. When you look at the Bhagavad Gita, there's a conversation between the god Krishna and Arjuna. And Krishna is leading Arjuna onto the battlefield because he has to fight in his war. And Arjuna is freaking out because he has to fight a war against his own people, his own grandparents and his uncles and his cousins. He got to go to war with them. He don't want to do it. And he's afraid he'll lose. He's afraid he'll die. And Krishna is telling him, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? You've already won. He said, you're already victorious. He said, all you got to do is launch the first arrow and I'm with you. Krishna was an incarnation of the god Vishnu, the supreme lord of the universe. He said, what are you worried about? I'm with you. Just launch he said, all I want you to do is launch the first arrow. If you can do that, you'll win. And I believe that. God already won. It's already over. All you gotta do is make the first step. And you'll win. You win. You already won. See it that way. And on that note, let's wrap it up. I want to say peace and blessings and thank you to everybody who was here. As I mentioned, this was supposed to cover multiple avatar figures. Keep taking your sons to the ocean. Okay. Yeah, and I had a lot of good memories of my dad too. My father passed away when I was 21. But thank you for the donation. Appreciate that, Adele. Yeah, my father passed away when I was 21. And I remember when we were young, he would take us to the beach. He would take us to the beach. I still remember those days of going to the beach, eating on the beach, eating sandwiches and drinking soda on the beach, and then we drive home. And I would always immediately come home, get in my bed, get under the blanket, and put the fan on because the cool air, and then feeling a little bit drowsy from breathing in the sea air all day and getting under that blanket, it always felt so good. Oh, I always loved that. And I used to love getting home and you still feel the ocean on your skin a little bit. I used to love that. Yeah, I mean, I love those memories, and I'm trying to bring my sons to the ocean. They hate the ocean though. They hate the ocean. I don't know why. They just hate it. But yeah, but like I was saying, I meant to cover multiple figures in this live stream. But what I'll do is instead of me just doing one live stream on Moses and leaving it at that, I'm going to continue this and turn this into a series. I'll probably do maybe like 3 or 4 of these melodies of the avatars. I think next week I want to do Krishna, and I was trying to rush and get it done. But the Moses one, I wanted to be in depth, and then I realized, oh wow, I got a good amount already. So I'll do Moses, and next week I think I'll do Krishna, and I think I want to do one on Jesus. We'll see. I will see. I'll come up with something. But thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you for the donation. And everybody, of course, you're always welcome for free. But anybody who, if the spirit moves you, you want to make a donation, is greatly appreciated. Right now I'm trying to expand my business and trying to reach more people. So if you want to donate to that and contribute to that, I'll really appreciate that. Of course, you're always welcome, regardless if you make a donation or not. I just want to say peace and love to all of y'all. Love y'all to life. Love y'all to death. And I'm gonna see y'all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 11:11. That's when the doors open. Between not only the doors open here, but between the worlds. So I'm gonna see y'all next week. All right. Peace and blessings.